Hi, and welcome back to the studio track. We are joined right now by our very own Cooper, who is our local video god. He has been doing the videos of Hack in the Box for many, many years. And we're here to talk about all of his experience in the past years.
Hi.
Welcome, Cooper. I've known you for several years now. You're nothing short of a legend. So you're the guy who makes me look good in all the talks that I give at Hack in the Box and several other conferences. We would like to talk to you about how you pull off all the magic.
Okay.
And what's all the wiring that goes on behind the scenes and everything you do to overcome all the adversities as well.
Sure.
Can you tell us a bit more about how you first started at Hack in the Box?
Yes.
Or first started by taping videos for conferences in general?
So, Hack in the Box was, I think, the second conference. Actually, it was the first conference I ever volunteered for.
Okay.
Just as, I was the guy standing at the door, helping people get in, making sure that if you didn't have a badge, you got sent back.
Mm-hmm.
This had everything to do with me trying to understand conferences better, because I was viewing a lot of conference talks online on YouTube. At the time, they were mostly American, so the DEF CON talks and that sort of thing, stuff that Iron Geek was doing. And it looked appealing. So I asked my employer to send me to a conference. So they sent me to an OWASP conference, the AppSec EU. For reference, I am a software developer, so going to an OWASP conference makes a lot of sense. And I went, hey, this is fun, I want to do this more. So I walked up to my boss and was like, hey, that was a fun conference, now I would like to also go to that. And they were like, no, that is way too expensive, we can't do that. So I looked into it, and going to a lot of conferences certainly is expensive, like doing one or two a year. I'm sure for like big ones like this wouldn't need to break the bank, but if you want to do more than that, then it becomes quite cost inhibitive. So the solution I found was to just volunteer for conferences, so you'd be able to at least pick up some of it.
Yep.
And I talked to a friend of mine, DigiNinja, on Twitter, who I asked him, like, what would be like a really good conference for someone like me to go to? And he mentioned a few, BruCon, OWASP, Hack in the Box got mentioned because it would be local to me in the Netherlands. And he, off the cuff, mentioned that he was organizing his own conference in Sheffield, England.
Oh.
Which was, of course, that just blew my mind. It was like, I know somebody who organizes a conference, what? So I told him, well, I'm going to come and volunteer for your conference. And I'm sure he thought I was completely nuts, because who travels from the Netherlands all the way to England to go to his 100-person, last time at least, con? But sure enough, there I was. And as I stood there going, hey, I'm here, I'm volunteering, what do I do? The person who was doing the camera duties for SteelCon walked through the door going, sorry, I'm super late, but we have an hour and a half to set up 2 tracks. Who can help me? So I was already interested somewhat in conference videoing as a thing. So I said, sure, let's help. I spent the rest of the day helping this individual filming SteelCon best we could. But in the end, I think about 60% of the talks that we tried to film could be put online, and the rest had to be discarded due to the various problems that we had. There was cameras out of focus, SD cards that filled up, the light balance was such that you just could not see what was going on, and all sorts of nitty little problems that just completely ruined the video. So after the conference was over, it also took many months before the talks would even become available. So I talked to the individual who was doing the videoing and asked him, like, how could we do better? And he had a few suggestions, but he wasn't really willing to follow through on it. But I was inspired, so I started collecting hardware, putting together what would become my first video rig. And at this same conference, I met Aaron Phoenix, who turned out to be organizing besides Hamburg opposite CCC.
When was all this? Like what
This
year
was
all
2015.
2015?
Yes.
So 7 years and counting.
Yes. I'm going to keep counting.
So,
he organized besides Hamburg opposite CCC. And before the event, he put out a tweet saying, there's not going to be any camera. There's not going to be any photography. We haven't arranged any of that. So if you want to see something of this conference, just show up. Which was my cue to go, hey, since there's no video, are you willing to take a chance and have me come in with this alpha as can be setup to see if I could maybe film your conference? And he was game. I actually ended up borrowing my mother's camera to do the other track.
Okay.
And filmed it. In the end, everything that I filmed there was at least good enough to be put online. I learned a heck of a lot, but that was what started it off. So I did one conference in 2015. From just that conference alone, I got leads to 2 other conferences that would be interested in getting filmed if I wanted to. And in 2019, the last full year before Corona, I had over 40 conferences in a single year.
that is nothing short of being impressive. And I mean, I know that people ask for his services by example. Like, if Cooper's going to do it, it'll be awesome. I know I'm one of the guys who requested to do exactly that. And I mean, it's been a pleasure working with you.
Very much likewise.
You've been pretty much all over the world. How do you manage to get things set up with perfection in record time?
The setting up bit I am still trying to make easier still. But I've had, you do something, you figure out that you have a problem and you fix it. And so for the next time you're better. One good example with Hack in the Box is I initially on my cameras, I would have near the camera, I would have a power outlet that would power all the bits near the camera. And I would have a power outlet on the stage to power all the things on the lectern. Until for one talk at Hack in the Box, some person decided that their phone needed charging. And they yanked the thing.
Ouch.
Oh dear.
So thankfully, by then I was already showing people what I got because I'm not shy to admit I'm well proud of what I've done here. Showed him like this is what you're supposed to see, and when it's wrong, you see that. That person happened to just be walking by the room where this had just happened, and went and fetched me, and it was like, oh yeah, this is definitely a problem that we quickly need to fix. And I've since addressed it by no longer relying on power sockets anywhere other than where the main PC is. So for most video, you have SDI, it's digital coax. I run along with my SDI cable, literally speaker cable that takes 12 volts off of the PC power supply. At camera side or on the lectern, I take a converter box. Schematics are on my website. You can 3D print the box. And I put in a cheap 70 cent at AliExpress or whatever, down converter, go from 12 volt or whatever's left of it after a huge length of cable. Take that down to 5 volts, which is then again reliable.
Yeah.
And from there, I feed my camera, I feed converter boxes on the lectern, I feed all the converters that people use, and I only rely on power at the PC. I have no external dependencies on the outer parts where I also have hardware. So this is something that you reach after trying a few things and then discovering that things are not reliable. I can tell you billions of things about the different kinds of plugs I've used before I settled on the ones that I'm now using, simply because they have to be reliable. You don't know if when you pull a cable, if somebody's going to put a mat over there, and subsequently a drinks cart's going to come by and go over over your cable. If you've got a flimsy connector there, that means no power or something and stuff breaks. So that sort of thing.
So I've seen you also tackle design level issues, right? One of the things before you started doing the conference videos, whenever I would see conference talks being recorded, it's some sort of an ugly combination of slides being projected, half of them projected on the speaker's face, and that whole thing being recorded. You can barely make out either the person's face or you can make out the slides, but not both at the same time. And somehow you bumble through it. The recording exists just for the sake of recording. What I've seen you do is you created this beautiful layout, right? You have figured out through, I think, design thinking that speakers are standing up. So you give them the left column for the speaker. Then you have the logo, then you have the slides, and everything is so crisp, clear, balanced. Audio is good. How do you make that whole thing happen? What's your rig and thought process magic?
I got, when I was doing, so for the first videos that I made, I was filming in landscape for the camera, and you get landscape from the slides. And then I had the trouble of how do you now combine that in yet another landscape thing? So you end up with doing things like the text on the slide is here, so I put the camera, the image from the camera over there. Next slide, the text is now on the bottom, so you put the image, and you practically get seasick from watching it. And it is a heck of a lot of work for you in editing after you've recorded something to get this right. So the end result was just that the method, whilst it looked good enough, the main reason for doing it differently was that this method didn't scale. So I focused on saying I want the slide to be visible throughout, because the one thing that absolutely annoyed me about watching conference videos is that you would have the speaker, somebody would decide that they wanted the speaker full frame, so no slide visible at all, and the speaker is at that point describing something on the slide, where you're going like, that would be nice to have seen.
Yeah.
So I went for a format where you would just see the slide throughout. The slide is also the bulk of the visual, and the camera is actually not really that important. It helps to get a bit of feel about what the person's about and what they're doing. It just makes for a more pleasant viewing experience. But for actually giving the meat of the talk, the content, you don't necessarily need the camera. It's just pleasurable.
It's a huge improvement over just slides with voice coming in versus slides with a person that you see speaking. It actually makes a presentation alive. It doesn't look like just a voiceover and a narration.
Yes.
It's certainly alive.
We had a lot of that with the live streams where people would go, I'm so fed up with being on camera for work and whatnot. I'm just gonna do my recording for my talk with the camera off. And if you then look at that, you genuinely go, why?
Yes, because it's so much easier to follow a presentation when you have someone telling it to you, when you see their face.
Yeah, you get some emotion from that, and you can see that the person presenting this is like really excited about the thing, and
yes.
and it's intoxicating to see somebody give like an inspired talk.
Yeah, it brings the energy level up.
Yes, and I don't see how you could possibly do that without having a camera on this person.
Even like some suppressed nuances, like a little smile or an expression like this. So you catch, your mind as a viewer catches everything. That's what you go to an event for. Like you want the real thing. This gives as close to the real thing as possible.
Yeah. Yes, and if you're not actually looking at someone presenting you might as well just be reading a book or an article explaining it in paper.
You just desync. You end up desyncing. It just becomes background noise. And then like the slide plays and you're off doing something else.
You hear from people that are after the conference very loudly going, I want the slide deck because I don't want to see the video for reasons such as for me it's just more efficient to just see the slide deck. From the slide deck I can pretty much think what the entire talk is going to be. I find it impressive, but some people can do that. Hack in the Box is one of the few places that actually collects the slide deck of everybody and publishes them. It's not something I see with most conferences. And you're going to have to rely on the video. And if the video is then dull or boring, then it just becomes difficult.
My first experience of seeing your output was at Hackaloo. I don't know when. Many Hackaloos ago is all I'm going to say. But once I finished my talk, by the time I got coffee and I got back into the track, you'd publish the talk on YouTube.
Yep.
I believe it was 13 minutes. I know it was less than 15, so I'm just going to go with 13. It's a good prime number. But how the heck did you pull that off within 13 minutes from me rocking off the stage and being up on YouTube?
I've made a very big point of streamlining the process so that, because nobody wants to work on a conference once the conference is over. Once the conference is over, it's time for after party, it's time for beers, it's time to hang out with your friends, and so nobody wants to spend a lot of time doing things afterwards. And for my first 2 conferences where I was filming things, the time I spent editing things afterwards was several weeks. I was spending my entire evening every single day working on trying to make it look presentable. And like I said, that just does not scale. So I've looked at pipelining, and I've looked at just really thinking about the workflow and making sure that whatever goes into a step is already in the exact format I need it to be, so that I can immediately move on to the next step. The most notable thing you might notice with my setup is that I'm with a hackerspace, Hack42, and there are some really nice crafty people there who, one of them made me a 90-degree bracket for the camera so that I can still use standard tripods, but due to the bracket, I am able to mount my camera not in landscape, but in portrait mode. And the reasoning here is that by putting the camera in portrait mode, I'm still getting a full HD image, but this full HD image is getting shrunk. It gets cleaned up, and then it gets shrunk to like a fourth, probably even less, of its original size, which sharpens it immensely and gives the equivalent of having like a really, really good sensor, even though my camera isn't that good. But just that little thing alone meant that I get better quality camera, because it looks sharp as it can be. And the processing of taking the image from that to this and smaller, I've completely put I've made that like part of the pipeline so that the video that emerges is already in the exact size that I need it to be. And that is what I save as like a backup. Yeah. Because also on the rig, I've got backups for everything. Because the point also with pipelining is that the people who help me on the day, they don't know anything about video. Hell, I don't know, and I don't know anything about the theory behind video. Right. But I can understand if I aim the camera that way, then what I see is what I get. Right. So if you wanted to have like a vertical sliver and you're filming in landscape, that means you have to know that there's a line here.
You're cropping it, yeah.
Yes. So and if you don't know where that line is, it's impossible to properly film.
Right.
So instead, I just rotate the camera. You know, I have the entire screen. And the only thing I have to tell you is, if you see the speaker, you're golden.
Exactly. So keep him in view.
So yeah, and you look at pipelining. So I've made a few scripts that automate the process of a video file comes out of OBS. By the way, the best software ever. Open Broadcaster Project System.
Yeah, Open Broadcasting System or something.
Broadcasting, yeah. I never know if it's broadcasting or broadcaster. But anyway, OBS Project on Twitter.
Yeah, exactly.
Best project ever. The video that comes out of that, I've made scripts that take this assembled version of the various inputs that I have, and that I can just say I'm at frame there until frame there. That is the bit that I want to keep. which is where the other bit of magical open source software comes along, FFmpeg.
Yes.
Where when you have an MP4 file, or it's actually more the codec, libx264, the concept is you have a full frame, and then you have a number of frames where it just changes. If you tell FFmpeg, I want from this frame to that frame, it can either re-encode, which takes forever, or it can do the smart thing, which is just backtrack until we get the full frame, and from there moment on, it's just a copy.
Right.
And because it's just a copy, you're just waiting for I/O.
Okay.
So if you do a 1-hour talk, I basically have to search back for maybe 30 seconds in the video for the point where, from where you actually start to where I have a full frame, and then just copy everything, put a little intro in front, a little outro at the end, so people know the talk is now over, and I can start uploading. Obviously, I also clean up the audio, because that varies from place to place.
That was actually what I was going to ask you about, and this is a pet peeve of mine. If the audio is messed up, it's pretty horrible.
It's difficult to listen to.
Video is, in a way, correct me if I'm wrong, slightly predictable, because a screen is a screen and screen output is screen output. Either it works or it doesn't work. The speaker is like either there or invisible, so not too many variations about that. But audio can be all over the place, and recording equipment, ambient noise, levels, all your videos are perfectly clean when it comes to audio. So, let's educate us on what those secrets are.
I've used professional, you could say, devices for this. I use a Shure X2U, which is a USB sound card that takes XLR in. And XLR is like the sound cable, for those who don't know, is like the sound cable for professional audio. And if you have any decent microphone, you will find that it has an XLR output somewhere. So my sound card can use that directly. The other benefit is that particular sound card is the size of a cigar. So it's really portable and really easy to take anywhere. In most places where I film, there is at least something like a mixer table, and you can just directly connect to the mixer table. Some places, because as you mentioned, I do conferences that are very small. I don't really care how big it is. If you're doing something interesting that is worthy is like worth of my time and other people's time to see this again, then I think it should be filmed so that people can see it again. And so I've done like, my hackerspace has done events where there were like 30 people there, but you put a camera there and people can watch it, and all of a sudden it's as if there were more people there. But there was no mixer. So I also have in every single one of my rigs, I have a condenser microphone, which you can just put anywhere in the room. My personal favorite is to tape it to the ceiling, because then it's out of the way and it's got like a clear direction, an unobstructed direction, a line of sight, if you will, to the speaker. So sound is easy enough and can easily travel there. And you get really great audio, despite there not being a really good microphone there. So
it's impressive.
And then, the only step after that is to use Audacity to take the audio from the video, make it look nice. You use FFmpeg again to replace the audio track with the one you just cleaned up, and you're done. And the magic, if you will, for this step is that with FFmpeg, the replacing of the audio track is no more effort than encoding an MP3. It doesn't touch the video at all. Also means that there's no loss in quality.
Right, it just like slices it in.
Yes.
Literally.
Which I don't understand the magic about that is going on there, but I love it to bits.
So Cooper, you have been doing all kinds of conferences for many, many years now. You must have some great stories to tell by now.
Well, I do have, this is a thing that I am contemplating doing. Haven't yet really put like proper thoughts into it. I've put the paper things that have gone wrong. I once saw a tweet from somebody who was a conference organizer, and the phrase he was using, pardon my French, was shit umbrella. that a conference organizer is a shit umbrella. Whenever there's shit, they make sure that it doesn't hit the people below. But that causes massive burnout under the conference organizer, because you're trying to do something nice and everybody just complains. So that got me thinking, like, how many things are going wrong during a conference, just any conference, that we are somehow able to hide from people, such that they don't realize that something went wrong, just because, we are able to cover for it. One of the examples I like to cite is where I've set up for multiple tracks in a venue. This was a school. It was a 3-track event, and I am in one of the tracks, and one of the volunteers approaches me and says, "Hey, we have a problem with the track in 4/7. 4/7? We don't have a track in 4/7. Turns out that the entire C-wing of the building had lost power. That wasn't going to come back anymore. And somebody just made the executive decision to just lift my entire rig up and plonk it in a different room, in a different build, in a different side of the building. And they got almost all the connections right. Almost. So I show up there, it's like, okay, run the cable. This one's wrong. This one's wrong. Right, you're good to go. And we had the track in there for the rest of the day.
Nobody noticed a thing.
There was an announcement that track got moved.
But nobody knows the complexity of what you just solved right then and there.
And I wasn't even there. That's the thing that I love the most. Like, I wasn't even there. Just some volunteers looked at it. Somebody made a few photographs of certain bits, like, okay, this looks a bit complex. Let's make a picture of it so we know how to connect it afterwards. And then they just literally just lifted it up, took it all out there, and plonked it in a different room, and that was it. And they did it perfectly.
That is brilliant. What next? What's your next? You've taken something which, pretty much was a very, what shall we say, a subset of a conference. Videos.
Mm-hmm.
You brought it to the main stage instead.
Yes.
Videos are like flowers. They're best when they're fresh. You publish them fresh.
Mm-hmm.
They get consumed on time. They're clean. They're beautiful. They've got life in it. You've perfected the format, perfected the audio, the layout. You've perfected your rigs. You've created your own tooling. You've scaled this. You can do 40 conferences a year. Probably 80 if you could do that.
But if I need to convince my employer. But yes.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a matter of permissions and not the tools and the process. But what's next? What do you want? What do you want to do?
Before Corona, I basically passed the hat around asking people to donate some money so that I would be able to make more of these rigs. At the time, I had 7 of them. 3 of them were fit for taking in the air. So I had a Pelican with 2 rigs in it, required that the organizer provided a few of the bulkier bits. I had one in a suitcase where I would go to an event that would just have a single track, and I would be able to film that. But I would bring everything. And there were the 4, call them standard rigs, that I would just throw in my car and drive to places with. But that is a lot of transport and a lot of logistics that I honestly could do without. So, and the other problem was that Brexit was coming along. And a fair few of my conferences, I'm saying my conferences that I film, are in England. And customs was going to become an issue if that went through. Well, it did went through. Thankfully, before then, I had already left 4 full rigs in England. There are 2 at 2 different universities with the hope they have an ethical hacking. They each have an ethical hacking society. They do a lot of talks for like their own group. I would really like to see them film that. They haven't done so. Probably has a lot to do with Corona. Then another 2 I left with a friend who does lockpicking villages throughout the UK. So that means he's already going somewhere with something heavy. So that typically means that he's driving, so he might as well take my rigs with him. That was at least theory. Similar process, when I thought of doing something like that, I went, okay, and now I want to do it proper big. So, like I said, passed the head around, and in the end, I was able to get the money to do, I think it is 21 rigs at the moment that I have under my, call it my supervision. There's 4 in India, 2 in Singapore. There's going to be 2 in Ireland. Due to Corona, I haven't been able to bring them there yet. There is 2 in Germany, and I still have, I think, 7 or 8 at mine. But what I would really like to see is that people who are doing an event, anything. I've learned that libraries do conferences.
Yes.
It blew my mind when I heard that, but awesome. There is interest here, clearly. These conferences get well visited. So, film the things. And if you find it inhibitive or whatever, have a chat with somebody who knows where my rigs are. Could be me, could be someone else, doesn't have to be me. We find a way via back channels and whatnot to get the rigs towards your event. And there are explanations on my website on how you put the thing together. Give it a try at home, preferably before the thing starts. Put the rigs in there, show people how to operate them. I can do that here in under 15 minutes. I can teach somebody how to operate everything, and it is not a difficult thing to do. And in the end, you have your conference filmed or your event filmed. So if I could find people who are willing to do the logistics, as in, I'm going to this event, I'm going to collect the rigs before I go and make sure that they show up there on time, and possibly other people or even the same people willing to take these bits and take them into a space and build it up. If we can find those people, that would really be amazing.
I'm going to make that my personal target for the next event that I'm either part of the organization or have any say formally or informally in the committee. We're going to make that a priority. I would personally love to see a 3-hour Cooper workshop. Let's get, pardon the word, Mini Coopers trained.
At Security, I actually had a Mini Cooper. They called, like everybody called him Mini Cooper.
Let's get folks trained in this art and craft. Mm-hmm. And you're right, like this must go out to way more events. I think you've got something. Also, I know you as a fantastic human being. You volunteer your efforts for free in several cases. So this thing must scale. This thing must grow. This thing must expand.
Yes.
Cooper, thank you so much for
thank you.
Sharing your time and keep us looking good.
I will.
Thanks.
Thank you.